On June 9th, Impact Wrestling entered the machine gun era because not only did Chris Sabin, for the 9th time, capture the X Division Championship, his partner, who joins me now on the Vaqueros Cafe and Cantina hotline after 20 years in the business, captured the Impact Wrestling World Championship. It is Alex Shelley. Follow him on Twitter at Fake Kincaid. Alex, first of all, congratulations on the title. You beat Steve Macklin at Against All Odds. Just talk through the emotions. I heard the promo and you said you ugly cried.
So it's surreal, right? But at the same time, when you finish a match and that happens, you're so physically depleted that it takes a second to kind of kick in. And when they handed me the belt, obviously that's a special moment, but it didn't register until later. And honestly, even beforehand, just knowing that that was on the line, it was more emotional than it was like right there in that moment, because you just beat the shit out of each other for 30 minutes. It's like you're just at your wit's end and physically depleted. After it sunk in, though, it was pretty cool. And to have all these different people reach out and congratulate you, and touch base with you, some of whom you haven't seen or heard from in years, was really, really special.
I imagine it was. I really do. As I mentioned, not only did you capture the world title, your partner Chris Sabin captured the X Division title. I mean, you guys, of course, you've held tag team gold, not only in Impact, but everywhere. How cool was it that both of you captured singles gold on the same night?
Oh, man. If you had told me 19 years ago when I started in Impact in 2004 that that was going to happen almost 20 years later, I wouldn't have believed you. Because, again, it seems like a dream come true. And I know that sounds cliche, but I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, I imagine. The bulk of your career you've spent in Impact Wrestling, TNA Wrestling, gone through its different iterations. What makes Impact Wrestling kind of your home?
I mentioned this in a promo, but certainly the incarnation of it now has so many people that have seen me grow up. And it's not people who saw me grow up mutually inside the wrestling industry and that's it. It's people who saw me grow in life and go through all these different periods and phases where I graduated college, or I got married, or I got divorced, or I got accepted into a medical community, or all these different things that have happened. And to share those experiences with people obviously creates a pretty strong bond. To me, that's probably the biggest difference maker. I've never been in a locker room as tightly knit as the current Impact locker room. I can honestly say that. Maybe the New Japan locker room, because those people are together so much in such close proximity for so long. But as far as American companies go, I've never seen a company that has such mutual respect amongst all the performers at every level.
And I've heard that before about Impact. It's definitely a locker room, very cohesive group of individuals, and it's so appreciated that you're now a Triple Crown champion in Impact. You've held the X Division Championship. Of course, as I mentioned, you and Chris, both tag team champions multiple times over. When I say that you are now a Triple Crown champion in Impact Wrestling, what kind of emotion does that bring?
It doesn't. Again, these are past accomplishments. So I'm not somebody, despite having to give this answer again and again, that really looks back on things that they've done previously and thinks, oh, wow, how great of me that I've done that. That probably speaks to my personality type, because I'm somebody who's always looking towards the next thing, maybe too much sometimes. And it's not like I'm creating a contingency plan for what happens when I win the world or lose the world title, but like at the same time, like this takes focus, this takes priority. So I don't devote any energy to any past accomplishment. I never have. I'm not that person. I'd much rather focus on what I can do right now.
Hey, that makes sense, and
Yeah.
totally get that. I totally get that. In addition to wrestling, you are a physical therapy clinician, and it kind of interested me because I work alongside athletic trainers in the state of
Oh,
Texas.
very good.
So, talk for a second about what it takes to be a physical therapy clinician, and what is a clinician? I mean, I know what physical therapist is, but what's a physical therapy clinician?
Same thing. It's just another way of
Okay.
saying I work. Okay. But like working in physical medicine gives you such an advantage in terms of working as an athlete inside sports too. If you work with ATCs, you've probably seen the amount of knowledge they have,
Mhm.
especially because they're first line of defense usually. So ATCs see them, then I see them later on. Um, to that end, physical medicine and biomechanics and movement are passions of mine. Strength and conditioning is a passion of mine. Uh, it carries over into pro wrestling like you wouldn't believe, man. I mean, because it's a contact sport, right? Like it's a very dynamic sport too. There's not, how can I put this? There's not a set movement pattern. There's not a set required body type or skill that you have to have. Whereas if you're an NFL lineman, guess what? Like you're going to be X amount of pounds. You're going to be probably yay high, and you're going to have to propel forward at great intensities for maybe 5 seconds to 10 seconds. Wrestling doesn't have anything like that because it's so versatile. I love that about it too.
Yeah, I had a chance to visit with Doc Sampson from AEW a couple weeks ago at a charity event here in Austin, and talked to him about some of the things that sports medicine, physical therapists, what they see from wrestlers, and
Yeah.
kind of how that works, and again, like you mentioned, physical therapists, athletic trainers, such a dynamic group that can help athletes not only on the field, in the court, in the ring, but afterwards as well. So that's
Yeah.
very cool. Let me ask you this: something I found out, you like punk rock, and
Yes, I do.
something I've noticed over the last, and I don't know why I've watched wrestling for most of my life, but over the last few years, the tie-in between punk rock and pro wrestling. Talk about that for a moment because I see it a lot, not only in guys like you on TV, but even the independent promotions that I work with here in Austin. So, talk for a second about that tie-in between punk rock and pro wrestling.
Or I think punk and indie rock, right? When you are in a band and you start out, you're driving for many hours and probably not making very much money, maybe not getting paid, but you're doing it for an opportunity and a passion. And I think that obviously is very similar to how many people start their pro wrestling journey too. It's in these small, intimate venues, and sometimes venues don't have chairs. Sometimes they don't need them, and it's very loud and it's very close proximity to your audience. And I think a lot of the energy, a lot of the work ethic carries over between both of them, which I think is part of the appeal. Certainly from a cultural standpoint too, they're both just so accessible now. When I was a teenager, it was hard to get certain records. Like you had to hunt for these things. It was hard to get certain wrestling tapes because you had to trade for them. Nowadays, you don't have to worry about records anymore, right? Like you just order it on Amazon or go on some website or just download it on Spotify. With wrestling, God, it's like you can have the greatest match in the world. I beat Steve Macklin for my first world title. Well, guess what? That was last week. Like this is a week later, so there's going to be something else that comes up that's going to demand everybody's attention, and that's just how society is nowadays. But at the same time, certainly, 20 years ago, I think they shared a lot of the same probably value systems and a lot of the same ethics as far as do it yourself and make sure that you really grind and enjoy this process because there's very good chances that you're not going to have any gold at the end of the rainbow. So you do it for the love of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's I'm in Austin. We are known as
Yep.
the live music capital of the world. Believe me, seeing a lot of those independent bands down, whether it's on Sixth Street or down on Rainy Street or whatever, and so I see that. I did see something where you, at least at one time, you're in a band. I think it's you and Chris Sabin and another wrestler. Are you? Is that band still around?
Oh, I mean, I was in bands growing up, like kind of perpetually, right? But I was in a band with Chris Sabin and Petey Williams for a little while too. But no, we are not. Shit, that was 10 years ago. If it was a day, our drummer was a recording engineer, and then he ended up getting a job with Amazon where he records audiobooks. So when he moved, he had to close his recording studio, and that was kind of the end of it.
Okay, I was going to say, because if you were, we got this little festival called South by Southwest down here, so
Oh, I've heard. Yeah. Oh,
maybe work
yeah.
on a date or something.
Yeah, that'd be all right, man. Maybe an acoustic set.
Hey, sure, why not?
Yeah.
Let's talk about, you've got a title defense coming up July 15th at Slammiversary, and it's against Nick Aldis, who is a two-time former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He showed his true colors this past week on Impact, which honestly didn't exactly surprise me. Probably didn't surprise you either. But talk for a moment about this is, I believe this will be your first title defense against someone that is held gold, world title gold, in the past.
Right. I think more so it's the matter of nobody wants to lose their belt on their first defense. Nobody wants to be that champion, right? And that does happen. Any wrestler can beat any other wrestler anytime there's a match. We all know that. But Nick's been a world champion many, many times over. And I think he exhibits a lot of qualities that people would typically associate with a world champion. Well, I don't, right? Like, I'm a working class hero. I came up on the independents. There was a company that called me the fighting artist. Very, very contrarian to what Nick represents. But I think a lot of people in my generation would say, well, yeah, here's what a world champion should be. So it's all of these two contrasting viewpoints colliding, not just me and Nick on a personal level, on a physical level. And I take being a representative of my generation and the style that I created in pro wrestling that has led so many other people to fall in love with it very seriously. And I want to prove that that style is the best. I want to prove that I'm a good representative of a generation that, again, if we're going to go back to punk rock, grinded and they enjoyed the process and they drove hours for no money. I'm not saying that Nick didn't do that, but I'm saying that we had to. We didn't have a choice.
Well, it should be a fantastic match. July 15th, Slammiversary will be in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. And of course, get it pay-per-view, Fight TV, all that good stuff. Alex, before I let you go, I want to ask a favor if I can.
Yeah.
I would like, and I have one from Chris. I would like to see if I can get a reader from you for my show. So I do a radio show here in Austin.
Sure.
The name of the show is Sports Guys Talking Wrestling. Do it however you see it. You're listening to, and would you mind doing that for me?
No, it's fine.
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Hey, this is Alex Shelley. You're listening to Sports Guys Talking Wrestling in Austin, Texas.
One take. I love it. Love it. He is the Impact Wrestling World Champion, Alex Shelley. By the way, tell folks how they can find you, buy merch, all that good stuff. Tell them how they can follow you more.
Yeah. It's not easy, right? Like, I wasn't thinking well when I picked handles on socials, but on Twitter, it's at Fake Kincaid. Kincaid is a very famous artist and fake paintings anyway. On Instagram, it's at Taste the Diff, DIFF.
Okay. All right. That's it. Alex, man, I appreciate the time. All the best to you. Hopefully looking forward to a long and prosperous reign as world champion in Impact Wrestling. Thanks so much for your time, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks so much for having me.